Now, the South African Broadcasting Corporation officials and unions have just finished their briefing to Parliament on a way forward at the state-owned entity that's struggling to stay afloat. The SABC has afforded labour unions a final shot at making written submissions which could potentially help avert the shedding of jobs. The public broadcaster intends retrenching about 600 employees as it investigates its financial crisis, just like other state-owned entities who are struggling to stay afloat. Now, for a discussion on this, I'm joined by Hannes Dubisson from Bemawu, he's the spokesperson, and Dudietsang Makuse, the national coordinator of Save Our SABC. Perhaps let's start with you, Hannes, on the outcomes of Parliament for today and what was put on the table.
Thank you. Yes, I think there wasn't really an outcome at this point in time. I think that subsequent to our previous session with them, there were some questions that was asked that was not, there was no time to answer those questions. And I think we were just been given an opportunity to answer those questions to the committee members. And this is what was done today. There were a few new complaints. For instance, the issue about the SABC terminating the physical or the verb meeting kind of consultation that was never raised before. So those are some of the things that was raised today.
And what is the status quo right now, and I'm going to pose this at you, Dudietsang, regarding the dismissal of the 13 employees from the SABC? And after you've responded, Hannes, you are most welcome to jump onto that as well.
I think, look, from where we're standing, we're reading it as the 13 were in a separate process to the Section 189, and that it was actually linked to the 2016 ad hoc committee inquiry report that required the public broadcaster to effectively follow up on any irregular appointments, promotions and the like. So that's our understanding of that process and how it unfolded. We do also understand that the Section 189 itself is still ongoing, and, you know, as Hannes has already indicated, that the relevant parties are still engaging.
And your view on the 13, Hannes?
Yeah, they are, in fact, they are not part of the Section 189. Those are the employees that the SABC earlier this year attempted to have the Labour Court setting aside their alleged irregular appointments. Then after the court ruling the judgment, the SABC issued them round about June with letters to explain why they should not be dismissed, why the SABC must recognize their contracts. And yeah, to quite a big surprise, they yesterday all of them received, at least all of our members received letters terminating their contracts with immediate effect. As we know, one of the presenters was even kind of taken off air. One of the main anchors of the online news was taken off air, program was disrupted, and those people were dismissed. The SABC did promise to pay them until the end of the month, but it came as quite a shock. And I think that the issue around the irregular appointments was not necessarily addressed at the particular employees. It was more to management who, if those people were appointed irregularly, to deal with the management that has done so, because no employee appoints him or herself. No employee goes and check with the employer to say, have you followed the process or have you not followed the process? So we've got a very simplistic view on this, and we believe that that would be the view that we will put forward at the end of the day, is that at the time when the parties contracted, there was a meeting of the minds, and if any irregularities existed at that point in time, the SABC chose to waive those irregularities, and that will be, in short, the argument at the end of the day. And yes, we are going to defend those employees at the CCMA.
So before your defending of the 13 employees, what is their fate until such time, and do you actually have a date for when the CCMA meeting will take place?
We don't have a time at this point in time, a date. We are in the process of referring, so that's quite a number of them that has been dismissed. The SABC said that they are going to also dismiss a second batch. We are watching this with a keen eye, because we believe that there are people who, if they are going to dismiss these people, then there are other people that has been appointed on the same basis, but which we believe is being protected by management. So we are watching with a keen eye to see if they are going to dismiss any of those. We are not saying that the SABC has the right to do so, but to us it will then be a matter of consistency. Are they going to deal with those employees in the same manner? Of course, if they do dismiss our members, even on the second batch, we will defend it. So we are in process of referring those disputes to the CCMA. Within 30 days, we should get a conciliation date. We will make a referral to arbitration, and hopefully in the next 3-4 months, that matter would be concluded.
Now, back to the Section 189 and those pending retrenchments, to you, Dudu Etsang. Your comments on the SABC's financial situation and ways that you believe Section 189 and those 600 could be remedied and those jobs saved.
Thank you. So, I mean, our view really as the coalition has always been that we recognize the financial predicament that the public broadcaster is in. We are in agreement with the general public that we cannot do any more bailouts. We also believe that management needs to be given the opportunity to not only develop business models and funding models, but also to operationalize particular plans. However, in relation to the Section 189, because we are actually not a legitimate party in the process, our view as a public interest organization is that management, labor, and staff need to work together to find out how to figure this thing out, but also to engage in cross-cutting measures that don't compromise the public mandate, because it's the public mandate that ensures that the public broadcaster remains a public interest and public-focused institution. And we also feel that because we're in a digital era, there is merit to the argument that some staff members might actually need to be reskilled, redeployed into different departments. And so I think obviously the onus here becomes then on, management, labor, and staff to figure out a way to make sure that they do all of that and ensure that the public broadcaster at the end of this entire process can deliver on its public mandates and is sustainable. And I think that's where the contention is coming in, because it's such a tricky balance to achieve, and yet both those things are critical, because without the right skilled individuals in the public broadcaster, you effectively won't have the right kind of content to survive in a digital era. But simultaneously, surviving in that space means that your revenue models, your business models, and your funding model, from a policy reform perspective, as well as from a commercial perspective, need to be sound, and they need to be adapted for the time.
Are you then saying, Dudu Etsang, that a part of the retrenchment process is not so much because of financial issues at the SABC, but a matter of staff that is not, skilled or upskilled enough to do the work that they ought to be doing?
No, I'm saying that if the SABC is arguing that retrenchments are happening because historically we've seen public records that indicate that the SABC is spending too much on labor costs, then while they are in that process, they need to ensure that they don't disadvantage the institution while trying to reduce the costs and trying to make sure that the institution becomes fit for purpose. Because ultimately it's about that mandate and the fact that the public needs to be centered in it. So they then need to determine, as management with labor and staff, who is required for what purpose in what division, and the money associated with paying for that. For us, we believe that editorial and content staff need to be prioritized, following which they then need to determine what their other requirements are going to be to operate effectively in the digital environment. But we do take note of the history of the SABC's financial crises that have led it to this moment, and we've seen enough evidence from public financial reports, as well as multiple inquiries and other reports, such as the Tulimat and Sellers reports, that have indicated that there has been a period of time where there was all kinds of irregular expenditure, mis-expenditure, and also just not following best practice in terms of utilizing your financial and your human resources.
And I want to bring this back to you, Hannes. You know, Dudizang spoke really in reference to the 600 and the retrenchments, but if you go back to the 13, part of the former public protector's report and part of the remedies that were put in place there is the fact that not only were some of these staff not adequately skilled for the roles that they were put in, but that those posts were not advertised beforehand. I mean, if those are the type of recommendations that have been put forward, that they perhaps be moved to other departments or even taken back to previous roles that they'd had before, is that a case that you are confident that you can win?
Well, remember what the Labour Court has advised the SABC in that judgment. The Labour Court has said to the SABC, your first option would be to negotiate with those employees. Now, let's deal with the issue about whether those people were skilled or not. We are now 3 years past the Slaudi era where those people were allegedly irregularly appointed. It cannot be that an employee sits in a position for 3 years and the manager will not manage that employee's performance in terms of being able to do his or her job every day. So one must then accept, because that would be, according to the Labour Court, a legitimate way, and we agree, to then either dismiss that employee or to say, look, you've been irregularly appointed in this particular position. In our view as the SABC, what we are going to do is we're going to move you back to your previous position because clearly you cannot do the job. There is not one such an instance where an employee has been performance managed because that person has not been qualified to do that particular job. Just coming back to the issue that Dudu has raised about the fear that the SABC may not be able to comply with its public service mandate, and that is exactly the point that we have been raising with the SABC. If you compare the SABC with other broadcasters, the SABC by law must broadcast in 11 languages. So if you then look at personnel cost, very simplistic, I'm not saying this is scientific, I'm saying a very simplistic way to look at this, could be that you must then 11 times the cost of the SABC, because for every language the SABC must appoint a person in the news and current affairs to deal with that language, in programming to deal with that culture, to comply with the service public mandate, whilst another station that the SABC, for instance, wants to compare the SABC with will only broadcast in one language. So then you would have that kind of a structure. You would have a flat structure in those kind of organizations. But you will have to have a more complex structure in an organization that by law is required to broadcast in all of those languages.
Dudizang, we have seen a new board at the SABC and perhaps some changes that have come along with it. What is it that you have noticed? What are the differences within the SABC? This is post the Hlaudi Motsoeneng era.
I think the first thing that we can all agree and note is that the ability to have a sense of stability means that you can finally deal with a lot of these issues that have been long-standing. It means you don't have a constant change of management where one strategy is adopted and then another is put away and then another is adopted. So I think in terms of the fact that stability allows for effective governance, that's the one thing that we've noted. And the second thing is also, it seems to be that from where we're standing, the board looks like they're adamant to ensure that the recommendations and resolutions of all these other public processes are indeed enforced. And there seems to be a commitment to turning the SABC around into a more sustainable public broadcaster. What we are seeing, though, is that in spite of their best efforts, at some point, I think we will also need to hold the government of this country accountable for the fact that the SABC actually has a funding model that no longer serves it, and for the fact that the public purse is not funding the public mandate or even the public broadcaster. And this speaks directly to Hannes's issue of the fact that we have a broader mandate in terms of our 11 languages plus sign language. And if you're going to finance that kind of public mandate costing, you have to cost it and you have to finance it. And a significant chunk of that is really going to have to come from the public purse, because commercial broadcasters just have no imperative to try and get into that kind of programming. It's not attractive programming. It definitely doesn't always draw advertisers. And even if it did, the advertising model is broken. And so I think fundamentally, underneath all of this, there's an opportunity now for us to really restructure the landscape and put the SABC in more stable footing, so that we don't have to have these kind of technical conversations about what to do with different components when the foundation is not solid.
Thank you very much, Dudu Etsang. That will be our final take from you and Save Our SABC. Thank you very much for that. In just 30 seconds, Hannes, your take on the SABC and the changes there.
Well, I would rather like to speak about the funding, and if everyone that owns a TV set is paying their TV license, there would be no reason for the SABC to stand with their hands, begging government for any money. So that is what the SABC must enforce. There is legislation in place. We think that the SABC should not increase television licenses. What they should do is to offer a discount for people that do pay their licenses in time. If people don't pay their licenses, that there is a fine that can be imposed on people, and it is a civil offence in terms of the Act. So the SABC can prosecute people that's not paying their TV licenses. In every country in the world, people are paying their TV licenses, and South Africa is the cheapest country in the world to pay a TV license. If that happens and everyone contribute to that, paying their TV licenses, we can fund the public mandate with that to start off with.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for your time and your insights today regarding the happenings at the South African Broadcasting Corporation. That's from Save Our SABC, Dudu Etsang Makuse, as well as Hannes Dubuso. Now,